Owen Reed hit the ground for the third time that morning, tasting blood and dirt. The obstacle course loomed ahead like a monster made of metal and rope, and he was losing to it badly. Around him, other cadets flew through the challenges with ease. The Quillen students used their forearms to swing across gaps that left Owen dangling helplessly. The massive Brolac warriors simply smashed through barriers he had to carefully climb over. 47 minutes, Reed, Instructor Vass called out, his voice flat with disappointment. The minimum passing time is 20. You're not even close. Owen pulled himself up, ignoring the pain in his ribs. He knew what everyone thought. Humanity had joined the Galactic Academy 5 years ago, and every human cadet before him had been impressive. Strong, fast, capable. Then there was Owen, barely 5'6", weighing less than most species children. He was the mistake, the weak link, the one who made instructors question if humans really belonged here. The worst part was knowing they were right about his body. He would never be strong like the others. His bones were light, his muscles lean, his reach pathetically short. But he refused to quit. Later that day, his squad boarded a transport for field exercises on Verdice 7, a jungle moon used for survival training. Owen sat in the back, invisible as always. His squad leader, a towering Brolac named Grint, made sure everyone knew Owen was dead weight. "Stay out of the way," Grint said as they prepared to deploy. "If you slow us down, I'll leave you behind." Owen nodded and said nothing. Arguments never helped. The jungle was thick and hot, filled with sounds he didn't recognize. The squad moved through it like they owned the place, weapons ready, sensors scanning. Owen kept up as best he could, his lighter frame actually helping him slip through vines that snagged the bigger cadets. Then everything stopped. Instructor Vass held up one hand, his face tight. "Tracks fresh ones." Owen moved closer and felt his stomach drop. The prints were enormous, each one showing 4 curved claws that had torn through the soil. Parallel drag marks suggested a tail. He had studied these in xenobiology class and hoped he would never see them in person. "Night Stalker," Vass said quietly. Everyone back to the transport. "Now, move slowly and stay together." The squad obeyed instantly. Night Stalkers were the nightmare species, the ones that had wiped out 3 entire battalions on the colony world of Rust Hollow. They were fast, intelligent, and absolutely lethal. Military doctrine was simple. If you found Night Stalker tracks, you ran. But Owen noticed something the others had missed. A second set of prints, much smaller, wandering away from the main trail. These prints were uneven, one side dragging slightly. There were scratches in the dirt that looked almost like words in a language made of desperation. The squad kept moving toward the transport. Owen looked at the small tracks one more time, then made a choice that would change everything. He slipped sideways into the thick brush, following the wounded trail, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his chest. The trail led him deeper into territory marked as forbidden on their maps. He moved carefully, watching for signs of the adult Night Stalker, but the area felt empty. Just ahead, he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was a clicking noise, sharp and rapid, mixed with something that sounded horribly like whimpering. Owen pushed through a final curtain of vines and found it. The young Night Stalker was maybe 4 feet long, its scales a dark blue-gray that shimmered in the filtered sunlight. It was caught in a metal trap, the kind illegal poachers used. The trap had closed around one of its rear legs, and the creature had clearly been fighting it for hours. Blood pooled beneath it. One of its eyes was swollen shut from smashing against the trap's housing. The Night Stalker saw Owen and made a sound like ripping metal. Its teeth were already the size of Owen's fingers, designed to tear through armor and bone. Every survival instinct Owen had screamed at him to run. Instead, he knelt down slowly and opened his emergency medical kit. "I know you're scared," Owen said softly. "I know you want to kill me, but you'll die here if someone doesn't help, and I can't walk away from that." The creature watched him with its one good eye. Owen had grown up on a frontier colony where his family rehabilitated injured animals. He had treated broken wings on birds that could gut him with their talons, had splinted legs on predators that could have easily taken his face off. He understood something most species didn't. Fear and aggression usually meant pain, Not evil, that he moved slowly, talking constantly, letting the Night Stalker see every movement. When he reached for the trap's release mechanism, the creature snapped at him, missing his hand by inches. Owen didn't flinch away. He just waited until it settled, then tried again. It took 20 minutes to free the leg. Owen used his entire medical kit, cleaning the wound and sealing it with synthetic skin. He injected antibiotics and pain medication, probably too much, but he had no idea about proper dosing for a species that wasn't in any medical database. When he finished, Owen stepped back and waited for the Night Stalker to run or attack. It did neither. It stood shakily, tested its injured leg, then looked at Owen with both eyes now. The swelling was already going down from the medicine. Then it did something that should have been impossible. It lowered its head slightly and made a soft chirping sound. Owen felt something shift in his chest. He reached out slowly and touched the creature's scaled head. It leaned into his hand. "You need a name," Owen whispered. "How about Shade?" The Night Stalker, Shade, made the chirping sound again. When Owen returned to base camp 2 hours later, he came back alone, or so it seemed. But in the jungle behind him, always just beyond sensor range, a shadow moved through the trees. It followed the small human who had saved its life, and it had no intention of leaving him, but Owen's instructors marked him as barely passing the field exercise. They had no idea he had just done something no one in galactic history had ever accomplished. He had made a friend of a monster, and that friendship would soon shake the foundations of everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans. Ren had been Owen's roommate for 3 months, and thought he knew everything about the strange little human. Humans needed less sleep than Quillen, ate bizarre combinations of food, and made odd jokes that rarely translated well. But Ren had never expected to wake up at midnight and find an apex predator sitting on Owen's desk like an oversized house pet. The Night Stalker was grooming itself, its tongue rasping across dark scales that reflected the room's dim safety lights. It paused mid-lick and turned to stare at Ren with eyes that gleamed like polished metal. Ren opened his mouth to scream. Owen's hand clamped over it instantly. "Please don't," Owen whispered. "His name is Shade. He's friendly." Ren's 4 eyes went wide enough to hurt. He made muffled noises behind Owen's hand until the human finally let go. "Friendly," Ren hissed. "That thing killed 47 soldiers on Rust Hollow. It's a walking nightmare with teeth. He was hurt, and I helped him," Owen said simply. "Now he stays close. I think he feels safe with me." Shade chirped softly and rubbed his head against Owen's shoulder. The gesture would have been cute if it wasn't coming from something that could bite through steel plating. Over the next week, Owen somehow convinced Ren to keep the secret. It helped that Shade seemed genuinely peaceful, at least around Owen. The Night Stalker spent his days in the jungle preserve surrounding the academy and his nights visiting Owen's window. He brought gifts, strange fruits, the occasional small animal he had hunted, once an entire branch of flowers that made Owen laugh until he cried. "He thinks you're pack," Ren said one evening, watching Shade arrange his latest offering at Owen's feet. "My homeworld has hive cats that behave similarly with their family units. But Night Stalkers aren't supposed to have pack instincts. Maybe nobody ever tried to be their pack before," Owen said. Everything fell apart on day 9. Academy sensors detected an unauthorized biological signature in Sector 7. Automated defense systems activated. Alarms screamed through every building. Owen's heart dropped into his stomach as he realized what had happened. Shade had wandered too close to the main facilities during his nightly visit. Lockdown protocols engaged instantly. Heavy doors sealed every corridor. Security teams mobilized with weapons designed to stop creatures exactly like Night Stalkers. Owen ran toward the command center, Ren close behind him, both of them knowing this was about to become very bad. They pulled Owen into an interrogation room before he made it halfway. 2 security officers and Instructor Vass waited inside, their faces carved from stone. "We detected a Night Stalker on Academy grounds," Vass said. "You were on Verdice 7 last week. You're going to tell us everything you know about this." Owen opened his mouth to explain, to somehow make them understand, when the wall exploded inward. Shade came through reinforced concrete like it was paper, his scales bristling his teeth bared in a snarl that made the entire room vibrate. For security, officers who had been positioned outside the room were down, injured but alive. Shade had pulled his strikes, something Night Stalkers supposedly never did. The creature positioned himself directly in front of Owen, his body low and ready, his eyes fixed on Vass and the security team. The message was clear: get through me first. Shade, no, Owen said firmly. These people aren't hurting me. Stand down. The Night Stalker's head swiveled toward Owen. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Shade straightened slightly, his aggressive posture easing. He moved to Owen's side but stayed between the human and everyone else. Vass stared like he was watching physics break. It responds to commands. That's not possible. It's not in it, Owen said quietly. His name is Shade. And yes, he responds to me because he trusts me. The interrogation became something else entirely after that. Dr. Yenna Aldris arrived within the hour, a xenobiologist who had studied Night Stalkers for 30 years. She examined Shade from a careful distance, her scanning equipment clicking and humming. In 200 years of contact with this species, we have never domesticated one, she said slowly. We've never even successfully communicated with one. They're classified as animals with high intelligence, but no capacity for bonding. Yet this one clearly recognizes you as something important. Humans are good at making friends with predators, Owen said. We've been doing it for thousands of years on Earth. Wolves became dogs. Wild cats became house cats. We even worked with birds that could take out our eyes and horses that could kick our heads off. We don't see teeth and claws and assume enemy. We see potential family. The Academy Board convened an emergency session. Half wanted to destroy Shade immediately. Half wanted to study what Owen had accomplished. Dr. Aldris broke the tie by pointing out that this was the first real breakthrough in understanding Night Stalkers, a species that had blocked colonization of 17 worlds. They reached a compromise. Owen could keep Shade under strict monitoring. Any sign of aggression toward others and the Night Stalker would be terminated. Owen agreed. Knowing he had no choice, word spread through the academy like fire. By the next morning, everyone knew about the human cadet and his impossible companion. Other students gave Owen a wide space in the corridors. Some looked at him with fear, others with something like awe. Only Ren stayed close, fascinated by what he called the most interesting scientific development of the century happening in our bedroom. Owen still failed his combat trials. Shade couldn't help with those. His scores remained at the bottom of the class. But now when he walked through the academy halls with a Night Stalker pacing beside him, nobody called him weak. They called him other things, stranger things, but never weak. In her laboratory, Dr. Aldris compiled her initial findings and sent them to the Galactic Council. Her report included one line that would eventually change everything. Human bonding capabilities with apex predators appear to exceed all known species. Recommend immediate study of potential military and diplomatic applications. Owen sat in his room that night, Shade's head resting on his lap, and wondered what he had started. He had just wanted to help an injured animal. He never imagined it would matter to anyone beyond himself and one grateful Night Stalker. He had no way of knowing that his simple act of kindness was about to reshape galactic politics, military strategy, and the future of human integration into the wider universe. Sometimes the smallest person makes the biggest difference, not through strength of body, but through strength of heart. And sometimes the monster everyone fears just needed one person brave enough to offer a hand instead of a weapon. Dr. Aldris had never been more confused in her 30 years of studying dangerous species. She watched Owen play with Shade in the secure observation area, the human tossing a ball that the Night Stalker retrieved with obvious joy. It looked like something from a nature documentary about domestic animals, except the animal in question could theoretically kill everyone in the building. "Explain it to me again," she said, her recording equipment capturing every word. "How did you know it wouldn't attack you when you freed it from that trap?" Owen shrugged, scratching behind Shade's ear ridge in a spot that made the creature's rear leg twitch. "I didn't know for certain, but I've worked with scared animals my whole life. My family ran a rehabilitation center on Terra Nova Colony. When something is hurt and afraid, it acts aggressive because that's all it has left. If you show them you're not a threat, Most of the time, they'll give you a chance. Most species don't think that way. Aldrich said, when we see a predator, we see danger. We calculate threat levels and maintain distance. Humans seem to see something else entirely. We see a story, Owen said thoughtfully. Shade was alone, injured, probably scared his parent abandoned him. He needed help. Everything else was just details. Aldrich made notes that would eventually become the foundation of a new field of study. Human bonding psychology was proving to be radically different from other species. Where most civilized races had evolved past their predator ancestry, humans had instead learned to incorporate it. They made allies of their hunters, partners of their threats. But Owen's growing fame came with a price. His combat scores remained dismal. While other cadets improved their hand-to-hand techniques and weapons proficiency, Owen still struggled with basic physical requirements. Grant, the Brolax squad leader, made sure everyone knew it. Hiding behind a pet doesn't make you a soldier, Grant said loudly in the training hall. You're still the weakest link, Reed. Still the mistake that makes humanity look bad. Owen said nothing, but Shade's low growl made several nearby cadets step back. The Night Stalker didn't like when people used aggressive tones with Owen. The real test came during survival training. Each cadet was required to spend 72 hours alone in a designated wilderness zone, living off the land and avoiding dangerous fauna. It was a solo exercise. Shade couldn't come. Owen knew this was where Grint planned to make his move. He saw in the way the Brolac volunteered to help set up equipment, the way he smiled when he thought nobody was watching. But Owen had no proof, and instructors believed Grint's record over Owen's suspicions. They dropped Owen in Zone 14, an area marked yellow for moderate danger. He had basic supplies, emergency beacon, and 3 days to prove he could survive. Shade watched the transport leave from the edge of the preserve, his distress obvious even from a distance. The first day went smoothly. Owen built a shelter using techniques his parents had taught him, found clean water, and identified edible plants. He avoided the local predators by understanding their territorial markers and keeping to the borders between hunting grounds where they rarely patrolled. That on the second day, he discovered his emergency beacon was dead. Someone had removed the power cell. His water purifier had been sabotaged. His medical kit was missing half its contents. Grint's work. It had to be. Owen could activate his backup beacon and fail the exercise, or he could adapt and survive. He chose survival. The zone contained 6 major predator species, according to his briefing materials. Owen spent the second day tracking them, learning their patterns, understanding their behavior. He found dens, marked territories, identified alpha individuals. He was smaller and weaker than everything here, but he was also smarter and more observant. By the third day, Owen had created something remarkable. He had mapped the entire zone's predator hierarchy and found the gaps between territories where prey animals gathered. He identified 3 species unknown to the Academy database and documented their behavior. He even managed to approach a creature called a ridge runner, a normally aggressive pack hunter, by using submissive body language and offering it part of his rations. The ridge runner didn't attack. Instead, it led Owen to a water source far cleaner than the contaminated stream his map had shown. In return, Owen cleaned a wound on the creature's flank that had been festering for days. When the transport returned on day 4, they found Owen waiting calmly at the pickup point. He had detailed notes on animal behavior, photographs of new species, and a map showing safe corridors through terrain previously marked as impassable. Instructor Vass read the reports 3 times. You were supposed to survive, Reed, not conduct a comprehensive ecological survey. I had time, Owen said simply, and understanding the animals made surviving easier. The Academy board reviewed his work. His survival score came back as the highest ever recorded. Dr. Aldrich requested copies of everything for research. Even Grint fell silent when the results were posted publicly. But something bigger was happening beyond the Academy. Dr. Aldrich's preliminary reports had reached the Galactic Council. Military strategists were running calculations. If humans could bond with Night Stalkers, what else could they bond with? The Krell sovereignty had been expanding aggressively for 20 years, using bioengineered war beasts that conventional weapons couldn't stop. Every species had tried to counter them and failed. Now, there was a possibility. A human possibility. Owen knew nothing about this. He was simply happy to have passed an important test. Ren celebrated by sneaking contraband sweets into their room. Shade celebrated by bringing Owen an entire dead tree, which somehow the Night Stalker thought was an appropriate gift. Late that night, Owen sat with his back against Shade's warm bulk and thought about his journey. He had come to the academy expecting to fail, expecting to prove that not all humans were cut out for military service. Instead, he had discovered that strength came in many forms, that he would never be the fastest runner or the strongest fighter. But he could speak a language most species had forgotten, the language of trust and connection that bridged the gap between civilization and the wild. In a galaxy that saw predators as enemies, Owen saw them as friends waiting to be made. That IT was a gift he hadn't asked for and didn't fully understand. But as Shade made a contented rumbling sound and Ren snored softly in the other bunk, Owen realized he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. And for some of them, it would change everything. The call came at 0300 station time. Owen was dragged from sleep by urgent pounding on his door. Shade was already awake, his body tense, sensing the unusual activity outside. Ren tumbled out of his bunk, all four arms flailing in confusion. Instructor Vass stood in the corridor with two officers Owen didn't recognize. Their uniforms carried the insignia of the Galactic Council Security Force. "Get dressed, Reed," Vass said. "You're needed immediately." 20 minutes later, Owen sat in a briefing room that smelled of recycled air and fear. The holographic display showed a space station called Aurora Point, a diplomatic facility that hosted embassies from 40 species. At least, it used to. Now the display showed emergency broadcasts of corridors splattered with blood and bodies being evacuated on medical shuttles. 43 dead in the past 6 hours, said Commander Dren, a scarred Quillen with military decorations covering half his chest. "We have 1,700 civilians still trapped on board. We're preparing to evacuate everyone and destroy the station." "What happened?" Owen asked, though part of him already knew. The Krell sovereignty sent a diplomatic gift 3 days ago. A contained specimen they claimed was peaceful, something for our xenobiology teams to study. It was a render. Owen had read about renders in military history classes. They were the Krell's ultimate weapon, bioengineered predators that made Night Stalkers look like house pets. They stood 9 feet tall, weighed over 800 pounds, and their armored scales could stop plasma rounds. The Krell had used them to clear entire colonies. "It escaped containment yesterday," Dren continued. "Every security team we've sent has been torn apart. We can't get close enough to use heavy weapons without risking the civilians. We're out of options." Dr. Aldris stepped forward from where she had been standing in the shadows. "I recommended we contact you, Owen. What you did with Shade proves humans have abilities we don't. We need you to try with the render." Owen felt his mouth go dry. "You want me to talk to it? Like I did with Shade? We want you to try anything that doesn't involve blowing up a station full of people," Dren said bluntly. "You have 12 hours before we evacuate the last civilians and destroy Aurora Point. If you think there's any chance you can calm that thing, communicate with it, or even just distract it long enough for us to get people out, we need to try." Every logical part of Owen's brain screamed that this was suicide. Shade had been young and injured. Arender was a fully grown war machine designed specifically to kill. But he thought about 1,700 people waiting to die and heard himself say, "I'll try." They prepped a fast ship for immediate departure. Owen packed minimal gear. Shade refused to be left behind, and after a brief argument that Owen knew he would lose, the Night Stalker came aboard. Ren volunteered without being asked, which didn't surprise Owen at all. Dr. Aldris joined them with monitoring equipment. The flight to Aurora Point took 4 hours. Owen spent it reading everything the galactic databases had on renders. Combat reports, biological studies, failed containment procedures. Every file ended the same way. Overwhelming force was the only effective response. Nobody had ever successfully communicated with one. That Aurora Point looked dead when they docked. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. The station's AI had sealed sections to slow the render's movement, but it kept breaking through. Tracking showed the creature had made its den in the agricultural dome, a massive greenhouse area in the station center. It stopped moving 2 hours ago, reported the security officer monitoring their approach. We think it's resting, but we can't confirm. Sensors are limited in that area. Owen's team moved through silent corridors marked with claw gouges and blast scoring. They found bodies the evacuation teams hadn't reached yet. Owen had to step over a security officer who looked young, probably on her first assignment. Shade made a low, whining sound, clearly disturbed by the smell of death. The agricultural dome loomed ahead, its entrance torn wide open. Owen could hear something moving inside, something big and heavy. His heart hammered against his ribs. "I'm going in alone," he said. "Absolutely not." Dren said through the comm, "Take the security team. If I bring weapons, it'll see me as a threat. This only works if I'm not threatening. Then you're going to die." Owen looked at Shade, who watched him with those intelligent eyes. "Maybe, but I have to try." He took only Shade and a medical scanner, leaving even his sidearm behind. Ren wanted to come, but Owen refused. If this went wrong, he didn't want his friend caught in it. The agricultural dome was a jungle of overgrown crops and broken irrigation systems. Owen moved slowly, watching for movement, listening for any sound. Then he saw it. The render crouched in a cleared area surrounded by torn vegetation. It was massive, exactly as terrible as the report suggested. Its scales were dark red with black patterns, its claws long as daggers. Blood stained its muzzle and chest. Owen almost ran. Every survival instinct demanded it. But then he noticed something that made him freeze for a different reason. The render was protecting something. Behind the creature, partially hidden by its bulk, Owen could see pale shapes. Eggs. At least 6 of them, arranged carefully on gathered plant material. The render wasn't on a rampage. It was defending a nest. Owen's mind raced. The Krell had sent a pregnant render to a diplomatic station. Either they hadn't known, which seemed unlikely, or they had known exactly what would happen when it laid eggs and became territorial. "Shade, stay close but don't threaten," Owen whispered. "I need to think." The render watched them with eyes that burned like hot coals. It made a sound like grinding stone, a warning that needed no translation. Owen had seconds to decide his approach before the creature decided for him. But he did the only thing that made sense. He sat down, making himself smaller, less threatening. Shade mirrored him, though the Night Stalker kept himself between Owen and the render. "I know you're scared," Owen said softly. "You're in a strange place, and your eggs are here, and everyone who comes near you tries to hurt you. I understand, but I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." The render tilted its head slightly. Owen took that as permission to keep talking to IT. Was going to be a very long night. Owen had been sitting motionless for 3 hours. His legs had gone numb an hour ago. Shade remained beside him, equally still, both of them watching the render watch them. The creature hadn't attacked, but it hadn't relaxed either. Every few minutes, it would shift position slightly, always keeping its body between Owen and the eggs. That he had noticed something during his observation. One of the eggs had a crack running along its shell, not from hatching, but from damage. The render kept touching it gently with one massive claw, making soft distress sounds that didn't match its terrifying appearance. "Your egg is hurt," Owen said quietly. He had been talking on and off, keeping his voice calm and low. "I think I can help, but you'd have to let me get close." The render's rumble deepened. Owen took that as a no. He tried a different approach. Moving very slowly, he took out his medical scanner and set it on the ground, then pushed it forward with one hand. The render sniffed at it suspiciously, but didn't destroy it. "It's a scanner. It can tell me what's wrong without me touching anything. I'm going to activate it now." Owen triggered the device remotely. Its soft hum filled the dome. The render tensed, but allowed the scan to complete. Owen's display lit up with data that made his heart sink. The damaged egg was leaking amniotic fluid. Whatever was inside would die within hours without intervention. There's a chemical imbalance in the dome's atmosphere, Owen said, more to himself than the render. The Krell probably calibrated your containment perfectly, but when you broke out, you ended up in an environment with wrong humidity and gas mixture. It's hurting your eggs. The render made a sound like broken glass, pure anguish that echoed through the dome. It knew something was wrong. It just didn't know what. Owen made a decision that was either brilliant or suicidal. He stood slowly, hands visible, and took one step forward. The render's roar shook the walls. Shade leaped in front of Owen, his own scales bristling. For a terrible moment, Owen thought both creatures would tear into each other in him. "I'm trying to save your baby," Owen said firmly. "I know you don't trust me. I know I'm small and weak and probably smell like prey. But that egg is dying, and I'm the only one here who can fix it. So you can kill me, or you can let me try. Your choice." The render stared at him. Owen stared back, forcing himself not to look away, not to show fear even though he was drowning in it. This was the moment that would determine if his gift with animals extended to bioengineered war machines, or if he was just an overconfident human about to die. The render stepped aside. Owen nearly collapsed from relief. Shade stayed close as Owen approached the eggs, moving with careful reverence. Up close, they were beautiful, each one the size of his torso with patterns that swirled like oil on water. The damaged egg was worse than the scan suggested. Owen called Dr. Aldris on his comm. "I need atmospheric controls for the agricultural dome. The gas mixture is wrong for render eggs." "Owen, focus on getting out of there," Aldris said. "We're running out of time. If I leave now, these eggs die and the render goes back to killing everyone. We fix the environment, we save the eggs, we save the station. Trust me." A long pause. Then Aldris's voice came back. "Tell me what you need." Owen read off the specifications from his medical scanner. The station's environmental systems were sophisticated enough to create custom atmospheres. Within minutes, Owen felt the air change. The humidity increased, the temperature rose slightly, and trace gases shifted to match what render eggs needed. The damaged egg stabilized. Owen used his medical supplies to seal the crack with a biodegradable patch that would hold until natural healing took over. His hands shook the entire time, aware that the render loomed over him, watching every movement. When he finished, Owen stepped back. The render immediately moved to the eggs, examining them with surprising gentleness. The distressed sound stopped. Instead, it made a low thrumming that Owen recognized as contentment. "You're going to be a good parent," Owen said softly. Then everything went wrong. The dome's entrance exploded inward. Security forces rushed in, weapons charged. Someone had overridden Aldris's authority and ordered an assault team to secure the area. "We have a clear shot," one of them shouted. "Taking it now." "No." Owen threw himself between the render and the weapons. Shade roared and lunged at the security team. Plasma rounds lit up the dome. Owen felt Shade's body slam into him, knocking him aside as a blast scorched the air where he had been standing. The Night Stalker took a glancing hit meant for Owen, his scales smoking. The render went berserk. It moved faster than something that size had any right to move, closing the distance to the security team in seconds. Claws flashed. Armor shredded. Men screamed. "Stand down," Owen shouted. "Everyone stand down right now." Nobody listened. The firefight intensified. The render was going to kill them all and probably destroy the eggs in the process. Owen did the only thing he could think of. He ran toward the render, not away from it. "Protect your eggs," he shouted at the creature. "They're what matters. Protect them." The render paused mid-strike. Its eyes found Owen's. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended species. The creature turned away from the security team and positioned itself over the eggs, creating a living barrier with its armored body. Commander Dren burst into the dome, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Cease fire. Everyone cease fire immediately." The weapons lowered slowly. The security team backed away, several of them injured. Shade limped to Owen's side, the burn on his flank already starting to heal. The render remained over its eggs, watching everything with wary intelligence. Dren looked at the scene and then at Owen. Tell me you accomplished something before my people complicated things. The render is a mother protecting her nest, Owen said, exhausted and shaking. The Krell sent a pregnant bioweapon to a diplomatic station, probably hoping exactly this would happen. She's not mindless. She's desperate. The atmospheric controls are fixed now. The eggs will survive. She'll stay calm as long as nobody threatens them. Dr. Aldris appeared behind Ren, her scanner already recording everything. This is extraordinary. If we can relocate her and the eggs safely, this represents the first peaceful resolution to a render encounter in recorded history. Relocate where? Dren asked. Nobody wants to render on their planet. Owen looked at the render, then at Shade, then back at Dren. There's a wildlife preserve on Terra Nova Colony. My parents run it. They've handled dangerous species before. If anyone can give her a safe place to raise her young, it's them. It took 6 more hours to arrange everything. The render, who Owen privately named Hope, though he never said it aloud, was sedated and transported with her eggs in a specialized containment unit. The station was saved. The casualties were real, but far fewer than they would have been as Owen watched the transport depart. He realized he had just changed everything again. The Krell's ultimate weapon had been defeated not with superior firepower, but with understanding and compassion. The implications would ripple across the galaxy. Ren put one hand on Owen's shoulder. You're going to be famous, and probably insufferable. Owen smiled weakly. I just want to sleep for a week. But sleep would have to wait, because the Krell were already learning what had happened, and they were not pleased. Owen woke in the Academy Medical Center to find his room filled with flowers from species he couldn't even pronounce. News feeds from across the galaxy played on loop, all showing the same footage. A small human standing between a render and armed security forces, refusing to back down. You've been unconscious for 18 hours, Ren said from the chair beside his bed. Exhaustion and stress-induced shock, the doctors said. Also, you're apparently the most famous cadet in Academy history now. Owen groaned and tried to sit up. Everything hurt. Where's Shay? Recovering from his burn. He'll be fine. Nightstalkias heal fast. Ren handed Owen a datapad. You should see this, though. The Galactic Council issued a formal statement. The statement was long and filled with political language, but the core message was simple. Humanity's unique ability to bond with apex predators had been officially recognized as a strategic asset. Multiple species were requesting human advisors for wildlife management, bioweapon countermeasures, and diplomatic applications. Owen's name was mentioned 17 times. They want to accelerate you to officer training, Ren continued. They're also offering research positions, teaching posts, and about 40 other things I stopped reading after the first page. Owen set the datapad aside. His head was spinning, and not from the medication. I just wanted to help an injured animal. Now it's military strategy. That's how the galaxy works. You proved humans can do something nobody else can. Of course they want to use it. Before Owen could respond, alarms blared through the academy. Not the training alarms he knew, but the real ones, the emergency klaxons that meant actual danger. Ren's datapad lit up with incoming alerts. Breach in Sector 9. Ren read quickly. Armed intruders. Multiple casualties. It's tagged as Krell. Owen was out of bed before his brain caught up with his body. He grabbed his uniform, ignoring the nurse who rushed into protest. They're here for the render research. They can't let what I did become public knowledge. It undermines their entire military doctrine. The Academy security tried to stop Owen from leaving medical. He pushed past them, ran at his heels. Shade appeared from somewhere, moving stiffly but ready. Together they ran toward Sector 9, where the research labs were located. They found Dr. Aldris first, pinned down behind an overturned desk while Krell infiltrators methodically destroyed her laboratory. Years of research on Night Stalkers and renders was burning. Data cores were being smashed. 3 of her research assistants lay unconscious. The lead Krell operative saw Owen and smiled, his translator rendering the expression into something cold. The human who breaks our weapons. The sovereignty sends its regards. He raised a weapon toward Aldris. Owen didn't think. He just moved, throwing himself into the line of fire. The blast never came. Shade hit the operative like a missile, bearing him to the ground. The Night Stalker's jaws closed around the Krell's weapon arm, not hard enough to sever, but hard enough to disarm. The other Krell turned their weapons toward Shade. Owen shouted a warning. Then the wall exploded inward for the second time in Owen's very strange week. Hope, the render, came through the reinforced barrier like it was paper. She should have been halfway to Terra Nova by now, sedated and secured. Instead, she was here, fully awake and absolutely furious. Behind her, more cadets poured into the room. Not just any cadets, but the ones Owen had helped during survival training, the ones who had learned from his approach to understanding dangerous creatures. And they had brought friends, ridge runners, the pack predators from the training preserve. Arc cats, whose electric discharge could stun Krell armor. Even a juvenile thornback, a species considered untrainable, following a human cadet named Sarah who had apparently been practicing Owen's techniques. The Krell infiltrators found themselves surrounded by creatures that shouldn't exist in coordinated groups, led by humans who shouldn't be able to control them. The fight was short and decisive. The Krell surrendered when Hope cornered their leader and made it clear she remembered who had put her eggs at risk. Commander Dren arrived with security forces to find the situation already resolved. He looked at Owen, at the assembled creatures, at the human cadets working with them, and shook his head slowly. "You started something, Reed. You know that, right?" Owen looked around at what they had built in such a short time. Humans and creatures working together, not through dominance, but through trust. "I think I have." The aftermath took days to sort out. The Krell sovereignty issued formal protests, but their infiltration attempt had violated every diplomatic protocol. The evidence of their deliberate sabotage with the render weakened their position significantly. Their expansion, which had seemed unstoppable, suddenly faced organized resistance. Hope was relocated successfully this time, with Owen personally overseeing the transfer. She settled into the Terra Nova Preserve, where his parents promised regular updates. Her eggs would hatch in 3 months. Owen planned to be there. The Academy board met to discuss Owen's final status. His combat scores were still terrible. He would never be a frontline soldier. But his contributions had reshaped military thinking and opened entirely new fields of study. They created a new designation for him: Interspecies Integration Specialist. He would lead teams of humans working with bonded creatures, teaching others his methods, and serving as a bridge between civilization and the wild species that had previously been only threats. On graduation day, Owen stood with his class wearing honors he hadn't expected. He still wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but he had proven that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the weakest frame carried the most important gift. Shade sat beside him during the ceremony, officially recognized as his partner rather than a pet. Rin graduated with honors in xenobiology, already planning to work with Owen's new unit. Dr. Aldris had rebuilt her laboratory and was now leading the Galactic Initiative on human-animal bonding studies. Even Grint approached Owen after the ceremony, awkward but sincere. "I was wrong about you. I'm sorry." Owen accepted the apology because holding grudges seemed pointless now. They had bigger things to focus on. His first assignment came through that evening. A colony world was dealing with invasive predators that were devastating their agriculture. Traditional solutions had failed. They needed someone who could understand the creatures and find a better way. Owen accepted immediately as he packed his gear and prepared to leave the academy. He thought about how far he had come. He had arrived expecting to fail, to prove that not every human was cut out for military service. Instead, he had discovered that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in matching other species at what they did best, but in doing what only humans could do. They built bridges where others saw walls. They made friends where others saw enemies. They turned monsters into family. Shade chirped softly and bumped Owen's hand with his head. Owen scratched behind the Night Stalker's ear ridge and smiled. "Ready for the next adventure?" he asked. The Shade's response was clear. Wherever Owen went, he would follow, because that's what family did. And somewhere in the galaxy, on a preserve on Terra Nova, a render named Hope guarded her eggs and waited for them to hatch. When they did, They would be born into a universe that was learning, slowly but surely, that the smallest among them could change everything, not through force, but through understanding, not through domination, but through compassion. Sometimes the weakest human was exactly what the universe needed most.